What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio, the show where every week we talk to the rebels who are shaping youth culture. We find out how they do it, why they do it, and what you can do to get a piece of the pie for yourself. We're the only show that features new music every week from the homies over at EDM.com. I'm your host, Josh Levine, and my guest this week, man, this dude, I've known this dude since 1997 when he shot a music video for me when I was managing WC. His name is Patrick Hoelck. He's a notable video director at the top of that game. He's also a photographer, a filmmaker. He's the host of the web series An Interview, where he interviews stars like Liv Tyler, Peter Sarsgaard, Parker Posey while he takes their portrait. And he also, man, like I said, he's prolific. He's also the host of Analogs.tv, another interview show where he interviews people like Jason Schwartzman, T.I., The Game, Asia Argento. The list goes on and on. He's going to tell us some great stories of how he made his way from the streets of New York to being connected to literally everyone in Hollywood. And he's going to give you some tips on how you can keep your head in the game as you make whatever you make. We'll get into that right after our EDM.com track of the week. Yo, that was the EDM.com track of the week. That was Lilo Key with Can You Swim. If you like that one, get over to EDM.com, check out new music. And of course, right now, let's get into the interview with Patrick Hoelck. Dude, I'm excited to have you here. I have wanted to interview you from the beginning of doing this because I like talking to creative people. And like, it occurs to me every time we run into each other, like I learn something new about you, that you just have all these layers. And like, so I was thinking back, we met 96.
I'd never know time, so I wanted to ask you that.
96, 97 would have been, because I was managing Dub C, and you shot our music video.
Oh yeah, with John B. Yeah.
We shot at a car wash.
We did shoot at a car wash.
Remember that?
Yep.
And then then I just started seeing you all the time after that. Like then you were doing that club with Pauline.
Yeah, we did a club at Indochine on Hauser.
Which was awesome.
That was an accidental club because I remember I threw a birthday party there.
Okay.
And Pauline was doing the reggae night somewhere else by the CNN building.
Yeah.
And she had hit them up and they're like, oh, we don't want any of that. We don't want a club. We're Indochine.
Right.
And then after my birthday party, they saw the numbers, the bar. And they're like, would you do a night? And I called Pauline. I'm like, will you help and do everything and I'll show up and, be out front?
And that was a great night, man. I remember like that was like...
It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. And it was, I think, at a time when like, if you knew the right people, you could just show up somewhere and just have a great night.
Totally.
And that's what, I would always come there and like just run into...
It was very random, wasn't it?
And,
like the crowd was a mixture of like young hipsters and then musicians and actors. It was weird. Yeah.
And then so it's like anyway through that like every time we bump into each other, you have like new projects and just all this amazing stuff.
I always like
happening.
to keep moving.
It's killer, man. So go back to the very beginning with music. And do you remember the first record you ever bought?
It was something. I think it was. Somebody gave me a Santana record.
Okay.
I think it was something of Santana or Pink Floyd. It was one of those. And I remember the headphones were in the den and I was listening to these things. I remember the wall being like crazy, the audio and the passing of sounds and all this stuff. That was weird. And it was a concept. So I think that was the early things would be Pink Floyd for me is what.
And
I
were
heard.
you hooked like from the beginning? Like when you heard that record, you're just like,
yeah, I always liked. Yeah, I always liked music. Music was always a base. It was always some sort of beginning. Yeah, definitely. And then you go into like all the layers. You go through a phase. I felt like that put me in a rock and roll classic rock phase, which then led to like, you know, the old timers saying you got to understand jazz if you want to understand that. And you got to understand X to Z, and you start exploring everything.
Yeah.
And then you become what I am now, which is just kind of like everything. It's weird. I like almost everything, except I do have, you know, I don't really love top 40.
Sure.
I can't get into something unless it's really embedded and ingrained in the new stuff. You know, some of it seems so...
It's funny, I'm the same way, but I find like I can now at this age, there's a lot of top 40 from when I was a kid that I can deal with that I didn't really like at the time. Like early Madonna. Like
sure.
at the time I wasn't fucking with that.
It becomes retro.
Yeah.
It becomes interesting.
Yeah.
I got lucky to meet, I went back to music and I moved to New York City at a young age, and I met a kid named Kevin Bray, who is Steve Bray's brother. Yeah. And ironically, Steve Bray was in the Breakfast Club, and he had worked with Madonna to play drums in Breakfast Club.
Oh, shit.
So Steve ended up producing her first 8 records.
Wow.
He's like, so I got to experience that pretty much firsthand after her first 2 records. I met her in New York City, and then I was like, your brother does what? He's like, he does all the songs. He wrote Borderline. He wrote this.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't know that about him.
Wow, that's great.
Pretty awesome. Now he's doing like The Color Purple on Broadway. He does musical Broadway shows.
And so how did you, if I understand, your first career was music videos.
Very, yeah. First was, oddly going back to the club, is the first thing I did was with a couple cats in LA, Messick and Mike Stein, and these guys had me as a promoter who became a club thrower. So I was doing undergrounds when I was like 16.
Wow.
And then started dating an older girl that I met, and she was like, you want to do film? Because I was like, I want to make movies. I had a screenplay about this kid that was like in a really bad neighborhood. It was like the duality of being black and white in different environments. And so I was like, I want to do this. And she's like, well, Kevin Bray, back to Kevin, he works at Indochine, ironically, again, in New York City. Yeah, it all kind of is like
crazy.
Real weird.
Yeah.
And he's doing a band called De La Soul and Gangstar. I talked to him about you, so if you come here, you could work on this shit. So I went there and I got into videos. Yeah, I got into art directing on what was the first Gangstar where he played Malcolm X? That was my first job. Manifest. Yeah. And Kevin was the director. And after a few videos, Kevin's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to do this. And so I got lucky, and New York was happening.
Sure.
And music video happened. And then Shady, Dave Perez, came into town with a band no one knew called fucking Cypress Hill. And he's like, I got a Kill a Man. Kevin, you can have... what's the other one? Hand on a Pump, and Patrick can assistant direct it until he, because I was growing. So that's how then I started directing music videos, but that's how it was Gangstar to Cypress to this moment.
Yeah.
And then.
So did you jump, because the original vision was to write a movie.
It was totally to do movie, but I understood that like you needed to learn equipment, gear, lighting, grip, the whole process. And there was no better place in those days than music video. You were able to have dollies and cameras and crew. And so it was a process without being a movie.
That's so crazy. So then was there, it sounded like that just started rolling for you. Was there like a break?
There was hard times in it because it was like getting competitive, but it was rolling in the sense that we had this hot young production company, and bringing Cypress into the mix didn't hurt. And then we used to play street ball with Adam Hoelck, and Hoelck started bringing his director projects. He went by Nathaniel Hornblower,
right?
Which was Nathan was his middle name, and hornblowing he said was directing, which is bragging about yourself. Nice. So I'm blowing my own horn. So he started bringing all their projects when they were doing Check Your Head over to our company, which was called Hex Films. So it started becoming so much synergy that then like the Diane Martel and the Marcus Ray Boys and all these things started happening, and it was a pinnacle New York City. Yeah. You know, Kevin was doing 5 videos a week. So just in his volume, we were able to pick up one as a director on the spill. You know, things were spilling over. He couldn't do everything. Right. You know, he was like X before X. Sure. You know, and it was like nonstop. Yeah. You know, he was the hottest shit.
So was that like, was there one job in particular that kind of like made things easier for you?
There was never, it was like assembling job after job after job. It was grindy. I'd say later in life that it became, I did a run where a Beenie Man gave me this massive video, and Alicia and a couple other artists that like made it bigger. And that was funny because the irony is it soon becomes Napster and disposed. It's like all of a sudden we're at this bigger mark, and I was around you. The Dub C wasn't a small video back then. It was probably like 250, which is insane now. You know, like I have friends that are doing Jay-Z and somebody else, and it's all combined like 180. And it's 4 things. Sure. Those were the heydays. I remember Missy Elliott and Little Mo was a pinnacle for me, where we were in Florida for 2 weeks and the numbers were just racing. The numbers like 1.6, 1.5. And you're like, this is insane. We had all these guests coming in, and ironically at that time too, I was listening to like Led Zeppelin on headphones. Not that I wasn't a Missy fan, but I was just somewhere else. And that's kind of when I got into print photography and disembarked myself from, and then also slowly began the journey to get back to what the intention was, which was narrative films. So the move to, well, actually before... Yeah, sorry, it's a jumbled story. No, this is great, but I'm curious, you know, you're bringing me back to that time when like the music was happening on the streets. There was no better time for me than to be in New York City. It was being in Disneyland. It was, I was leaving the lawless, like LA seemed to be a police state where we would get arrested for jaywalking. I went to New York City and you're lighting joints and smoking 40s, walking amongst police officers. The worst a police officer did if you had a syringe, a handgun, and a 40 would be like, and you'd be like, put it away. You'd be like, yes. That was strict. So I was coming from LA, I'm going there, and then rap's exploding. So my life changed dramatically, you know. I became close with Guru and a couple of Drez from Black Sheep, and these guys were just like, we were all intermingling through this party, which was Hex Films, which became a thing. So as a filmmaker and a visual storyteller, right, so you now... we'll get to, but you work in print photography, you work in all these different media. And so how does the visual side shape culture? I see now a surgence of remembering those gurus and the beatniks and the hooligans. It transmorphs into, you'll be sitting with like Wiz Khalifa and they'll be like, yo, that shit's crazy, that moment. So in a sense, it keeps regurgitating that dysfunctional, like Chief Keef, ODB. These things keep going down. And it's funny because the new generation is like, oh, this is brand new, they don't know. What I find interesting about a lot of the new gen is they don't go back 10 minutes. You know, where they don't know what Nirvana is. That's different to me. But I think it's very much like, I remember Tip from Quest sitting in Soul Kitchen where they had cheap 40s and chicken. This was Jack Luber and Frankie Iglesias Club. And Tip would sit in the corner listening to oldies and riffs and writing low-end theory. And I saw this, you know, I don't think it's different. It just keeps recycling into what it is today, you know? It leans on those times, though. Those guys are studying it, you know? The audience, I don't know what they're referencing. I don't know either. I don't know what they're digging back on, knowing is, oh, this, I'll hear something and I'll be like, oh, that's this song. But no one, you know, so... I don't either, and I think part of it is just we're flooded with so much content right now. Beyond flooded. Someone said that there was, like, the Grammys, it was like 480 new shows, which is like, is it bad, is it good? I don't know. I don't know the answer. You know, I know a neurosurgeon, oddly enough, that said that, like, he's seeing young kids come in with spasms and seizures, and they're thinking there's a direct relation to having your phone on the football game, having a Netflix series on, and doing something else, all simultaneously. Stimulation isn't built to happen.
Well, yeah, I'm
they're
sure.
They're seeing weird brain things in the new world, and it's like, wow, okay.
I mean, it's interesting. I had that experience with my kid is 8, but when he was first born, we had like music on all the time, and I had read some bullshit about like it stimulates the brain or whatever, and then we were trying to get him to sleep, and we ended up, working with this doctor who was like, you got to make the house quiet for a half hour before he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like once she explained it, I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, but before she had explained it, like the logical thing to me was like, oh, have nice music playing that distracts them or whatever. And she's like, you're totally overstimulating him, right? Because you got all these toys and shit to play with, and right. And so, I think we're seeing that now in society, that we're just overstimulated.
Which I'm guilty of. Like, if I watch a show, I like to, like, I'm a madman. I like to get it finished and then watch all of it.
Is that right?
I like to watch season releases.
It's hard. I have this nostalgia for, like, the idea that you had to wait for next week to find out what's going to happen, which is a totally, like, it's sort of a stupid thing because you only waited because you had to. Yeah. No one would have chosen that back in the day if if we had the option. I think it's interesting, and yet, you talk about like budgets, are obviously much lower than what they used to be. But I also think, and we don't have this MTV or this like direct channel for music videos in the same way that we used to. But we're so much more of a visual society now than we used to be. So I wonder how
it still lives. It's weird. I have friends that are musicians, and they do well, and they just have their own release on Vimeo or YouTube that gets millions and millions of hits. I guess it's just like they took their thing and put it on their platform versus somebody doing it. But then at the same time, platforms do help if they're the right platforms. Yeah. Like when someone says they have a Netflix deal, you know that it's a good, a big deal. Yeah. And it has big distribution. Sure. I don't know. It's an interesting. It's fun to watch sometimes, and then sometimes it's disheartening to, what are these new kids going to do? Like, how can a new kid be me with photography when you have a phone that kind of has every image in the world in your database, or your Instagram account, you could see everything. What's his moment with the photography? How do you do that?
Well, that's what I wonder, right? Because, you're a professional version of everybody on the planet now, right? Because
which I've never been comfortable. I always feel like professional is like, it's like the games, like, I don't know how to say it, but I always felt like it was, I've never arrived to where, where I think there's something inside me to express that I haven't gotten to.
But I guess what I mean is that, when we started out, your average person had never shot a video, right? Had never had a photo shoot, right? Like, you go buy the 36, exposure roll and take some pictures on your vacation. But
no, you really struggled to do it.
We didn't take pictures.
Yeah, because you had to go process it. You had to spend money to do this.
Absolutely, and they didn't, right? And they didn't look that good, whatever you took and all that. And so a professional, like a photographer for a living, did something that just most people couldn't do, and a video director or a filmmaker, right? Like, that was a complete foreign experience for most people. So now everybody in the world is an amateur photographer, filmmaker.
Yes, it's kind of like the Warholian 15 minutes of fame is now for the mass. Everyone has their 15 minutes.
So does that change things for you?
It doesn't. It's like you still have this romantic voice that says good things rise to the top. Good content will be found. Great music will be discovered. So I bet on that in the sense that, like, I'm not going for attention. There's something that I'm doing, which the older I get it's a more internal voice to make sure you're happy. Because a lot of the industry stuff and a lot of the commercialism stuff is, at the end of the day, you produce something, and you handed it away. You gave it away, and it's not yours anymore. You
Sure.
have nothing to do with it. So I guess now I've just been making things that make myself internally happy, like the interview series. That's how I've dealt with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think about it too much because I think it's like a diversion, or what I'm not, which is I always felt like in life, you're either critical, you're critiquing, or you're creating. And I got lucky to hang out with some people in New York when I was a kid that were always creating and never critiquing it, you know, which you do some really bad work a lot of the time, but you're not even aware of that any more than you're aware of the complimentary good work.
Yeah, sure.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I always felt like persistence and staying on the inner voice and turning up the inner voice as loud as you can.
How do you do that?
You just, I don't know, I just do silence. I do meditation, I surf a little bit, and I sit and I be alone, and I, you know, because it's very easy in pop culture, I think, I have friends that I feel sad for, no names, but they will pontificate taking the younger generation and putting it next to them in all their content to get likes, views, and a big audience. And it's working. They have big audiences. But it goes back to the commercial question. Are you building something that you'll be proud of in 8 years, or are you doing something to be relevant this afternoon?
Yeah.
And that's a dynamic, you know?
So take that back to the decision to move away from music video back to photography.
It wasn't hard, man, because music video was like this crashing plane, and it was going down in flames, and I was going down in flames too, because I was part of the party. I had taken drugs too far and everything too far, and I was life and entertainment and what I was doing were one big symbiotic ball, and I lost my way. It's funny because people would say to me, we're having a party, don't let the party have you, and you go, yeah, and you wake up in 5 years and you're like, you know, a heroin addict, and that's what I did. While that was happening, video was descending and exploding. So when I got alone and got recovered and got sober and got my life together, I started taking pictures with a really shitty Canon AE1 of people on tours like that. Coachella used to be called Lollapalooza, and I'd go and shoot people, and I would show it, and all of a sudden photography became a real career.
Nice.
And then it led back to video, which was funny because I did a presentation to have stills get me back in video, realizing that stills was not only more lucrative, it took less people to tell sometimes a bigger story.
Sure.
And a couple of campaigns, like a couple actresses and a couple like Levi's campaigns and stuff like that showed me even economically there was no comparison.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw my first big day rate in photography, not that it's all about dough, but it was more than doing 10 music videos.
Really?
And it was ironic. These are the glory days where you could
sure.
get, you know, 50 to 60,000 for 8 hours. Wow. And those days in music video were very rare. So not only did I feel like I had more control of the story, I had less people interjecting with what it was. It's weird because when I started out, I was only allowed to do rap videos, then fought to do R&B videos, and then fought to do rock and roll videos. In still photography, I would be doing the game, and then later in the evening, we'd be doing a beauty piece on Katie Holmes. So I was like, this is cool because no one's fucking trapping me. I'm playing visual pinochle, which was a goal. Because in video, it's like, he likes this or he likes that. So in stills, I was really cautious to do something very expressive and different. And pick, like, go, okay, we've been shooting a lot of actors. Let's shoot actresses. Let's not shoot actresses. Let's go shoot, like, Plies in Florida with, like, gold fronts and Goon Nation. That's fun because I like people and the dynamic you can move around, you know. Stills gave me that. Video was like, oh, he's going to have to do 700 presentations to do an R&B video.
Right. Yeah.
And that got exhausting,
you
know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting dynamic that, you know, I guess it's true in life, but especially in the creative world, that like you get a job because of your previous work.
Sometimes.
Right? And I'm guilty of that when I hire designers. You know, I'm like, I've made the mistake of just hiring somebody I thought was really talented. But then, you know, I found it more successful to just find someone whose work already looks like the piece that I want them to make for me, and then just have them do it. And I realize you're cheating yourself of some creativity there, but you're also limiting your risk.
I got a funny story with that EA Sports. They had this monster revamping of The Sims, which was this big game years ago.
Yeah.
And I met an intern on the street that said, like, he told me the story about how it happened because I got this Sims job that was huge in like 5 days and very big. And what had happened is they had visual references for 6 months in the office that were my stills.
Oh, wow.
So they had all these stills on the board, and this intern kid that used to bring them coffee and shit, they got tired in the board meetings on the 80th thought of the creative. And they said, let's ask this kid, because he's young and his ears to the ground.
Sure.
Who would you get to shoot this? And he goes, whose are those?
Yeah.
And they go, I don't know. And he goes, get the guy that shot those, because that's what you want to do.
Exactly.
And they ended up hiring me. But it's just ironic and funny how this little thing, like you said, it's
absolutely.
like.
But that, like, that's
random.
that's the easy way. If you're on the buying side, right?
Sure.
Is you just find something that already looks like what you want. And so I guess the question though is, you know, you talk about the flip side of that, which is not just shooting rappers or just shooting, you know, one kind of thing and moving from editorial to, you know, advertising and all that stuff. So is that a fight as well? To get people to hire you for stuff that's, if your interest is in building a diverse body of work, right? Is that a fight to get people to hire you for something that they haven't seen already?
I feel like nowadays I haven't been auditioning as much, and I've been just kind of focusing in on shows like The Interview or the Analog series, which are creating stuff out of our own office and our own space. Yeah. So I haven't been on the audition block in a minute, and you know, it's like you're walking on a ledge of, like, because, you know, you need to eat, but also you need to express yourself. So I've just been playing a game of, I do stuff I'm proud of, and every once in a while something becomes in discovery that they want to do or figure out, you know, like once in a while I'll meet a couple years ago I met a really good female singer who found what I was doing interesting, and then I contributed to some pictures, and the pictures became her tour, her shirts, her merchandise, and her world. And she did so well that, like, other people started going, how did you make this singer like this? She was already like that. We just took pictures. But those jobs happen now, which are, I literally shot her. She insisted on shooting in my house. She would insist on shooting by things like, I have a cross above my bed, though I'm not a strong Catholic. It was a cross I took from my mother's grave. It was like one last piece, and she knew it meant something. She was like into just things that meant something. And it became a whole new reinvention and introduction to me into 2016 pop culture.
Wow.
Did I plan it? No. She called me while I was walking around a museum with a friend and said, can we do some pictures at your house in a couple hours? I'm at Brooks Brothers and I have a men's shirt. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then it became a tour and a world. And I had to ask the girl who I barely knew at the museum, I was like, do you mind holding a light? Because this girl, I need to take pictures of her.
That's cool.
It's
That's
like,
hilarious.
did I plan it? Did I sell it? Did I pitch it? No, those are like, that's kind of the weird place of work becoming stuff, which I can't intellectualize that process. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you plan these things. It's to me like the old saying, if the Beatles were going to go on to Strawberry Fields, why didn't they just jump over She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah? But they couldn't. They had to do this to go to this, and that's, I guess I'm on my street to try to get to my Strawberry Fields.
Right. But it seems like
it would be nice to bypass all of it and just go do the White Album.
Sure.
But you can't. I don't think it's intellectualized. I think it's like still photography was video's not going well. I'm going to shoot some girls I know at my house. And then friends going, this girls at your house thing is looking like a series. And you're like, what's a series? They're like, well, it's got this continuum. And I'm like, I'll shoot more girls at my house. And then someone comes and says, you should do a book.
Yeah.
And you're like, a book for what? And then, as I think you know my background, I did a book called Tar.
Yeah.
Tar is a series of nudes with stockings against a paneling wall. And what happened with Tar was Steven Meisel stole the concept for CK1. CK1 gave me media that Steven, the master, the biggest guy in the world, stole something from someone you've never heard of. That leads to Levi's saying, we want you to do low-rise denim, our biggest piece of the year. You'll be sharing company with Peter Lindbergh, Terry Richardson, XYZ, and you guys are going to go out and change the world for Levi's denim. But it starts with some chick against the wall who later becomes like one of the girls in war paint, Jen, who's awesome. But how do you? Yeah, you can't. How do you do that? It doesn't make sense. Right. Yeah. So I have a lot of new kids that work in my office that are like, I just want to go to the bang. Right. And they also have the pressure of like, I ain't gonna be here long. I'm gonna do something like Uber. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's stressful, So I just want to get mine. Right. You know what I mean? How'd you get yours? I'm like, I don't know, man. 30 years. I don't know if I got mine. Right. Tomorrow might be mine. Yeah. Yeah. It's weird too. Things come in and out. Like you said, you see like certain musical pieces being reassembled and called something else. Yeah. Right. And then you see something fresh, which is really fun. Like Tyler. Tyler's fresh and fun. It's like it's weird. Yeah. I watched the video with like Leo and whatever, and I was like, this is weird, man. Yeah. Totally. It's crazy. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like there's a bit of go with the flow. Sure. But there's also, like I would say, you have a really strong direction that's pulling you. Something, and I don't have it rationalized or defined. What stands out to you as the mistakes along the way where you maybe got pulled off course, or you maybe like said yes to something that wasn't bringing you in that direction? Some of the commercial work. Yeah. Sometimes when you're doing a commercial piece and you have interjection, you're set to fail because you have 6 people that have conflicting opinions that aren't communicating with one another and are giving you pieces of it, like, he doesn't know, but we're going to do this. Yeah. You're going to do this. She thinks it's this, but it's a spaceship. And you feel like a video was like this weird hypocrisy when it started getting the invention of products and cars and placements. Yeah. Because the placement of the car wanted something. The artist met me for coffee about something. Management said she thinks you're doing something, but it's not something. And the label's like going, motherfucker, this is what we're doing. So you hear me, right? I'm like, did you guys talk? No, that's the artist. They're over there. Here's what we're doing. So you start to go, those were mistakes because I was making everyone miserable. Myself, I couldn't give them what they want. I let down an artist that had a dream. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you're just like, that's not happy. It's not cool. Sure. I mean, I think those mistakes, and you have an inner voice, and sometimes you choose to ignore it. And then there's other times when you're like, listen, I could pay my house off if I do this and get the fuck out of my way. What's 3 days to getting my house out of the way? Right. And then you just swallow your voice, and you just go, okay, I'm going to execute it. Yeah. But a lot of those journeys, they say, a lot of times you get hired to be you, and then it's like the old story. It's like, we want you, but not you. Yeah. We want it to be. It's like a relationship. This guy says, the girl fell in love with the tiger. She's like, I'd really like you if you would just take the claws off. And then the claws come off, and he's like, but your hair's long. Just the hair off. And then the teeth are sharp. Just take the shit. By the time, it's not you anymore that you fell in love with. So that happens. And those were mistakes, I guess, along the way of being quiet, knowing I was getting to put my head in the noose and walking down the plank and jumping. Those were in bigger financial commercial jobs, both print and motion and what have you. Those were the times when you knew you were like, there was no winning this.
Yeah.
You knew early in the meetings.
I'm sure.
In those conference calls.
I mean, I think
this is so-and-so. Can it be circle?
Well, you know, people in my business, in the client service business, they love to complain about that kind of shit. But I think, I think the signs are always there.
Sure.
I think they're there from the first meeting. I had a meeting the other day with a potential client where I was like, if I want to listen to this voice, it's telling me that we're not going to have a good time together.
No.
So then you decide,
yeah, like, is
not.
it worth this for me? Is it another piece of your soul or what your abilities are?
Absolutely.
It's sad to not be able to perform your best work.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you need rein and direction.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm some island that needs to be left alone. I love interjections. When I made a movie, I realized that you take in all this information and then you kind of just, directors take the best pieces of all the influence. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
That was Mercy?
Mercy was definitely like really good people giving their best opinion and me taking a sentence or lifting a word or a phrase. And Scott with me was a great screenwriter. He'd written 30 things, and Scott let me sit over him and act out the whole screenplay with him and changed everything I ever wanted to change in it.
Wow.
Because Scott wrote a lot more than I did I was less dialogue and more action. He was more dialogue, less action, and we found the middle.
Nice.
Like both of us hitting that moment together became what I think is a cool film, that I'm happy with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were you set out to make movies.
I did.
And then you made a movie. Did a whole bunch of other shit, and then
a whole bunch of other shit. Made a movie. Made a whole bunch of other shit. I'm just now getting the interest of maybe doing another film, but it was this little kid making a goal that he didn't understand. I always feel like I was like, if I make a movie, I'll have done something for me. And when you get to the finish line and you make the movie and the thing happens and all this stuff, I was like, it's not enough. It's like...
there was an interview, you said something about, I don't remember the words, but that there was like a sort of a depressing...
There is, after anything big and creative, there's a long down. And I got warned. I had a great friend in Paul Anderson who makes he's like one of the biggest filmmakers in our generation. He said, be careful after you finish and it's all done. There's a postpartum. It's like having a child, because something happens where and I think I know what it is, because on a film, you get to go in the morning, you put on your headphones and you get to express complete creativity for 8 to 15 hours a day, and everyone's there to serve it and make it happen. I guess when that ends, and that ends after the edit and after the release, because the edit's the same, you get to keep putting interjection. When that's all gone and all is quiet and you're alone again, you go through a sadness. It's like, I'm not able to, God, why can't I just go put on the headphones again tomorrow?
Right.
Yeah. That's also interesting, too, because in short term, 4-day shoots, 3-day shoots, you get to build up this huge thing and it's quickly over. Right. So it doesn't really
it doesn't set in, maybe.
It doesn't get time to set in. But after Mercy and after a film, I found to be that you're sad for a good couple of months.
I think you're also, on a music video or a commercial shoot, it's pretty clear that it's not your piece.
Sure. You're executing to make the vision for the ad agency as big and perfect and sell it as you can. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I always was able to do that. I wasn't the guy, one thing I didn't do in commercial work is ever take a job and be like, oh, fuck.
Right.
I never did that. Yeah. I'm like, my goal, once I said yes, knowingly, is to make this thing as the best I can for the client, to make them really fucking happy with it. Otherwise, I would just say no on the intro. Just no, man, because I can't. Yeah. Paul actually told me the other day a story. It was like they were pushing him to do the Lord of the Rings pilot, which is now, not, what's it called on HBO? the biggest show they have.
Oh, the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, they begged Paul to do the trailer. They kept
Wow.
saying, would you please? And he's like, I just couldn't do like the costuming and believe in the dragon.
That's not his thing.
No, and it never would be. Everyone's like, isn't that a big mistake? He's like, no, still not a mistake. Still not like feeling a dragon in like a Comme des Garçons sweater with a wig on and shit.
Right.
Like, I don't see it,
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Because if you signed up for it, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah.
The financial, monetary, it doesn't serve.
No, and I think, again, you got to want to be like, who's the guy, Peter Jackson or whatever, that wants to make that type of film.
Yeah.
So then you make more of that type of film.
I've never got into period stuff like that.
No,
and
I don't.
That mystical.
Me neither.
I don't know why.
My movies, my wife and I have really different tastes in movies.
Yeah.
And like my movie, I need to be able to believe that I could be in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I liked reality as well.
Yeah.
Like I liked Cassavetes, which was like people used to say about him, why am I going to the movie theater to watch my life at home with all the abuse and anger? And hostility?
Sure.
Like his movies were miserable failures.
That's what
people
I
were
like
like, I went to the theater to see something. Now I feel like I'm in my living room.
Yeah, it's not escapism.
Right.
But that's not what we're always looking for,
Totally.
So after Mercy, then you go through that depression. Are you is then like the goal to make another film?
The goal wasn't right
does that
away.
change?
The goal was like, what do you want to do? Like you kind of fulfilled a childhood fantasy, and then immediately, of course, like as we do to ourselves, a book became important. So I still have that goal.
Yeah.
I still haven't written a novel, and that's something I've been working on for many, many years.
Nice.
And that's what I'll do. And then things would come together like shorter content, which becomes an interview, the series, where I was like, I like to do journalism. I like people. I've never been on camera. This is a weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do the stills, motion, and journalism all at the same time. So the interview kind of took a lot of those excitements and put them into a place. Because I always feel like people say, what do you like better, film or photography? What do you like better, writing or, and you're like, I don't have a preference, man. I like to do stuff. It doesn't matter if it's, painting a picture with watercolors or shooting a portrait of somebody.
Yeah.
It's all, in a sense, it's that flow state that you're looking for.
Yeah.
To lose yourself into a moment where you're not so, back to you say mistakes you make. Mistakes to me is like when I overanalyze or I intellectualize too long without doing it. It gets further away when you don't just jump on the creative process. And I do that all the time. Like I'll be, like right now I'm in an idea, and I've been in an idea for like 3 months, so it's not fun. It's like being in a war with yourself. It's better just to execute the idea, to see it come.
Yeah.
Interview was a long time. We were meeting with Vice and all these other media companies about what the show was, and it took forever until we finally got it going.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't like ideation as much as action. I know you need both, but I can get miserable in analyzing something, overanalyzing.
Yeah, sure.
Because then it's like kind of like you almost come to the point where you made it and you don't really like it without doing anything. Do you know what I mean? You're like, I don't even need to execute that one.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
There's something you said I want to ask you about. Oh, there's a quote I've read of yours that says, everybody's got a story, most people can't tell it.
That's lifted from from our interview series. I just feel like I began the journey of the interview series to just kind of have a different understanding and a different, like, what interview is cool about is it doesn't really push movies or projects with the people. It's more about the familiarities and what we're doing today, which is like trying to understand the way, why, where, what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's like a piece of that kind of.
So what is it, why can't most people tell their story? What's missing?
What's missing is, I guess it's the action. That's one. Fear. Fear doesn't help. Being overwhelmed, which I have a worry for the new generation when they're seeing like the Instagram feed and everybody playing their third person. Some kids take that serious. If you're in like Nebraska, you think you're just supposed to already be the shit. And you're, it's like as we know it, because we're in the entertainment business, we know it's like an illusionary state. But some of these kids around the world, they stop before they start, I think. That would be a reason to not be able to tell it. I think there's a lot of that I'm here, you're not shit going on in the social tension.
Sure.
And I think it could disable a kid that wants to do something, right? They're like, oh, these kids are just like, oh, and they're not really. It's kind of like in school, we had a version of it where I didn't have sex, and I'm like, hey, did you guys ever like hook up with a girl? And they're like, 10.
Right.
But they didn't.
Yeah.
But that's like the Instagram. It's like, I'm here,
sure.
you're not. I'm in like the Ferrari 747 doing flips. Where are you at? And these other kids are like, fuck, is that it? I'm not even close. I might as well just work at Denny's.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I guess, that way, it's like not being able to tell the story. Which is sad, right? I mean, I don't know.
So what's the fix? What would you give as advice to those kids?
To execute, to do their lives, to live their lives, and not to be, I guess it's like, I think we're at such a loud point of external influence. It might be cool to just start becoming, and I see hopes of and little glimmers of it. I think the Bob Dylans of tomorrow are the new generation. I feel like our kids are going to be, I don't have any, but my friends that have kids all seem to be going, why are you on that? That's goofy. Why are you showing yourself DJing or doing something? And the new generation's like not showing. And then they're also shooting, why we called our series Analogs is interesting because kids are reverting to phonograph and film. And there seems to be this other thing about disclosure. This new generation seems to be about disclosing everything from like taking a shit to what they're eating. Yeah. I think maybe this will create an explosion of the next gen, which might be more like artistic and cool and not so like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I don't know. That's a thing I'm thinking. So maybe these kids that are like scared to start should start in their own capacity, not being influenced by this I think it's like this Kardashian moment, which even you see is starting to fringe. And you're wondering what's going to happen, because I'm from the Paris days where we would walk down the street on Robertson and have fucking south of France paparazzi. And then Twitter came in and Instagram took it away because they shoot themselves. So we don't need 1 billion of them. And then that's the days when Kim was carrying her bags in a distant background taking notes on how do I become Paris Hilton. And you're like, and then, what's next? It's like this thing is kind of like, now we have the 2 little ones that were children on the show selling bags. And
totally. She got her own show.
Kylie. I'm not hating it. I think it's all fun. I can watch an art movie and also watch Vanderpump Rules or Below Deck and think they're all interesting. Yeah, because I have my girlfriend, like, she watches Below Deck, and I'm guilty. I'm like, dude, we got to see all this
That's
shit.
the one where they're on the ship?
Yeah. I've been on a few boats, and I was like, that's interesting, because that subworld I never knew. They're just these nice people that are like, Patrick likes a cappuccino, and they hand it to you. You're like, these people are genius. But now you're seeing the other side of who's doing what.
Totally.
But back to it, I don't know, man. I wish I had the answer, but I feel like we're at another place, which we've seen. Whenever something gets so loud, it explodes and dissolves. Like, I remember at my age when all the boy bands, like, what's Wahlberg's brother's name?
New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, New Kids on the Block. They were fucking the biggest thing in the world. And then in comes Guns N' Roses, which doesn't have a prayer, and it destroys a generation of music, which leads into Nirvana and all the... So I think we're amongst the precipice of a bomb, of an explosion going off, and I'm excited to see what it is. I wish I knew what it is, but I don't. But it isn't going to be everyone's famous, and there's a reality show on a reality show of a reality show. It's going to be fun to watch something happen, And I think anyone that's struggling or sad or trying to tell something, thinking about how much there is as opposed to how little there is they can do, right? They can totally reframe from what the current like my friends that are taking photos with girls wearing a napkin for more followers, you know?
Yeah.
It'd be easy to fall into those trappings, but I feel like you'll look back and it'll be like when we were kids and I look back and I was wearing a fucking white concert on jacket in Palm Springs looking like I was in Wham. I'd rather look back at the photos where I had the shaved head and the Dickies.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure,
but
yeah,
these things
absolutely.
happen.
Of course.
But I feel like that's that thing where you go back and you go, I was showing myself eating spaghetti.
Well, you know,
Weird.
look, I mean, we all had our phases, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
That's part of youth is discovering who you are, and you have to try on
Totally.
some shit that doesn't fit
Yeah.
to get there, right? And you know, I think it's the added challenge of now doing that in the public eye, doing it in potentially a global.
I guess I don't mean to bash it. I just think that there's like I get excited because huge momentous moments create a reaction to it or a new one.
Yeah.
So I really think it's going to be interesting in the world to see what comes out of this phase. This phase feels like it's stretched an hour long.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, so I guess I'm excited to see what's tomorrow. You know.
absolutely. So as far as your current project, I saw you have a Patreon.
Yeah, we're trying that out. I like new technology. Patreon is where analogs and a podcast we've been doing and other projects will live. And we're just seeing what it does as far as the interaction and the audience and like what we're building.
Is that so? Like opening that up to the audience. Does that change the process versus, you know, kind of doing everything behind the curtain and then releasing it?
I guess we're doing everything behind the curtain and showing a little bit of the curtain, and we're not making it to, I don't know, we're just kind of making our own thing and seeing if there's any interest in it, you know, just curious. But we're not going, this will be something, will they like this? We haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
I think like Analogs was, we'll put together this DV footage because otherwise I'll just throw it away.
Yeah.
And then a kid cut it with images and then said, why don't you tell a story about this day? And then you start going, and then I was like, wow, these parts can become a whole, and the whole can become a long-form project, which would lead back to some form of documentary.
That's cool.
So I think it's cool. So it's like almost like we're releasing all the pieces, the crumbs that become the cake, that become the film.
Yeah.
And that's what Analogs is exciting about.
Nice.
And it's also, you know, like the podcast is, we're deriving podcasts from the long form interviews I did with the series.
Yeah.
Because the series is 7 to 10 minute episodes, and the interviews we did could be up to 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
So we're taking a different portrayal off of the X'd footage and creating.
That's cool.
We're doing one this week with Diane Kruger, which is cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how is the audio only? Does that like, I don't know, does that feel different?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, but then I listen to a lot of podcasts.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
What
I
do you
listen
listen
to. I like Bret Easton Ellis. He has the B podcast. I like Mark Maron. What the fuck? I like pieces of Adam Carolla. I also listen to. There's this guy what's the guy's name that does all the trying to get to the point of successful people. What's his name?
Is that Tim Ferriss?
Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
I listen to pieces. I kind of listen to a bunch of them, and you know, I don't have one I just go to. I just kind of do it like, you know, intake.
Nice.
But I like a lot of those, and I think it's a cool. I don't know. There's something cool about also NPR with the This American Life.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was thinking I have a lot of screenplays. I wrote at least 6 screenplays that I didn't turn into features. So, for example, the podcast led me to think, wouldn't it be interesting if we can do almost This American Life with a screenplay, where maybe I'm good enough to read just the intros and then have actors play the parts, and then do audio, like if you're exterior, to make the sounds of exterior, then maybe share it through the Patreon thing to have people draw pieces of it.
Absolutely.
Then it could become a whole thing.
That's
so
cool.
I guess audio is like another base to just build from.
Absolutely.
But I was thinking that the other day.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a growing part, I think, of podcasting is the scripted, you know, almost like old radio.
Sure.
There's
Yeah, I don't
dramatic
know if
programming.
it'd work or it would be a disaster, but I think I'm going to put up one of the screenplays and try to put together a
Nice.
crew to execute it and
Yeah.
see what we can do to it,
Yeah,
you know.
that's cool.
It's cool too. Also in the audio world, I've met podcasters and people that have set up big ones. Like the guy I've been working with now, he did what was his big one? He did the guy that does Jason Bentley, and then he went into Adam Carolla, and he's this weird like kind of like emo dude from Silver Lake. So he's inspiring too to like kind
That's
of hear like I've done this, I've done that. This was good. I did this. I did bands playing inside of something else, and I was like, this is like, you know, makes you think like
Yeah.
there's a lot to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I want to get to a little lightning round before we
Lightning round.
before we get out of here. So, what are you most excited about right now in life?
Most excited about? I never think about it, man.
No?
I guess it's just going back to work and working today. I don't
Okay.
have any big exciting thing.
All right. Tell me one decision that changed your life forever.
Getting clean,
Yeah.
getting sober was a big change because I was like on the outs, you know? Yeah.
When was that?
25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like that die or live moment,
Yeah.
and I just said I want to live, you
Sure.
know? So that would be big.
Can imagine. Complete this sentence. I don't have talent. I have blank.
Drive.
So, what talent or skill have you always wished you'd had more of?
Maybe playing instruments, music. Yeah,
I mean,
I
your
kind of wish.
piano's not bad.
No, but I wish I could just like, you know, I have friends that are like, you know,
Yeah.
like John Bryan who could play everything.
Sure.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I hate my friends like that. What if you were going to choose another career outside of this sort of creative world that you're in? What would it be?
That's great because I don't know. I was thinking about it, like something to do with helping more in recovery, like becoming almost like the guy that got me sober is someone I think about every day, and to be on like helpful like that. But I don't know, it's something magical because I worked with a lot of people in this recovery thing, and you meet 1 out of 1,000 that's good. So you know, it's like kind of like I wouldn't mind doing that if I had the ability, which is yet to be discovered.
Of course. Yeah. So if I worked for you, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
That's a good one. I'm trying to think of what I said to somebody that works for me today. You know, you would get an email with 3 sentences of things I want done, and then I would probably ask you too many times if you understood the sentences. You know?
Yeah,
I do
that's
this
good.
repetition, and
Sure.
I think it's just like, you know, my own insecurity or my own, you know, I learned that like I'm not always good at driving results out of like unmotivated people. It's a hard thing to do.
You know, it's funny you say that because so I've read a lot about business and about parenting.
Yeah.
And one of the main common themes that is in all of that literature is that it's all about repetition. And yet we are typically so frustrated when we have to repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
You're like, why do I have to keep saying this? Why didn't you get it the
Yeah.
first time? And then I was this one parenting book I read that said, like, you tell your kid you love them every day. Like for parents that do that, right? Like, you don't say, oh, I said that once, so I don't ever need to say it again. He gets it, right? Or like, and so it was that the brain learns what's important in part by how often we hear it. And, you know, and you would say that about, you know, whether it's mantras or affirmations, or right? Like, it's only through the repetition that we really
I've
get
noticed
stuff.
that like world leaders, dictators, and even the great Donald Trump,
Yeah.
he says it 3 times.
Right.
Always 3.
Yeah.
There's like, you'll see it. If he doesn't get the 3rd one out, it's coming, maybe
Sure.
later.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so keep repeating yourself. That's.
Or not.
Who would you be most excited to learn was a fan of your work?
Oh, man. I don't know.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know.
No, you don't have to. What's your favorite city to travel to?
Favorite city? I like two things. I like city, I like Paris, and I like Costa Rica because it's tropical. So I have this I like cities and I like tropical environments.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, me too.
Not one more than the other.
Yeah.
I guess if I had to get stuck, it might be good to be stuck in Costa Rica as opposed to Paris. I don't know.
Yeah. What's the last great book you read?
What was the last great one? Oh my God, I was just talking about this. Let me see. What was the one? Because I've been fucking up and reading 3 at a time, so it's hard to extrapolate. Yeah. Oh, Ari, the Aristotle Onassis biography of the shipping tycoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was like, to have this guy's biography it just seems not real.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, you should read it. Ari is really good.
I will.
John Stewart's
I don't know
book,
too much about him.
John Stewart's book also about the beginning, like it has the first day of him on the Daily Show throughout the whole thing.
Oh, cool.
Told from everyone's point of view, including his own.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Nice.
I like that book. But I read a lot, so it's hard. But Ari, I would say, is like jaw-dropping.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll add that to the list. What movie have you seen the most in your life?
The most? Probably the Cassavetes films. Probably like Woman Under the Influence, even though it's like, I just always go back to Godard and Cassavetes for rediscovery of things, and Fellini. One of those, like La Dolce Vita, something like I've revisited too many times. Eric Romer. There's a bunch of them because I like film that I go back and I watch a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting too. The older I get, the more I can see flaws in not so much the Fellinis, the Godards, and the Cassavetes, but the flaws in like the Scorseses, the Casinos, and the Goodfellas. I watched Goodfellas the other night and was able to like kind of rip apart things that I bet you he looks at and goes, fuck, I shouldn't have done this or that.
Like story stuff or like on screen?
Both. Visual and story problems, which you never saw before. I thought they were just these well-oiled machines of perfection. Yeah. You know? It'd be interesting. I haven't seen Casino in a long time, but what I was watching in Goodfellas was like, this is dragging, or this isn't that interesting. We don't need to do this, or this is forced.
Oh, I would hate to experience that. Like... For me,
me too,
like,
because like I haven't seen the films for 10 years. My girlfriend was like, "What's this Goodfellas thing?" Because she's 25.
Sure.
And I was like, "Here, let's watch it." And then you see it, and you see it from a different. It's weird that like certain films get better, and certain films that you thought you would never talk shit about or even notice something. Yeah. Me, I thought for sure I would never be able to look at Goodfellas and have something to say. Of course. Even though Martin Scorsese would probably say, fuck you, you don't have anything to say. But I watched it and was like, Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Yeah, I don't want to.
I have to watch Casino next and see if it's okay.
No, I don't want to do that. I want to lose.
Living your dreams.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always had this funny theory where I think Martin Scorsese made Mean Streets like 35 times until he got to The Aviator, and then he switched game. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Absolutely. But you know what holds well is Woody Allen, man. Woody Allen's films. I rewatch Manhattan and Annie Hall, and you're like, still good, still good. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
And that's just personal opinion.
Sure.
It's where I'm at. Maybe it has nothing to do with it.
No, but I think, it's also where you're at when you saw it, right? So like, movies, I've been rewatching a lot of movies from the 80s, from when I was a kid now with my kid, and like movies that I remember liking that are just complete garbage because I wasn't paying attention at the time. I was 14 and
That was another thing about going back into making films that, like, you asked me earlier and I didn't answer maybe as well as this, is like, when we were kids, we were told that if we made a film, it would last forever, like making a record, and that record or that film will be in the history of our lives and future lives. Right. So you had this romantic idea that, like, it's almost like buying a parkway or a street to be named after you. Right. And then I was reading this literature from a Roman leader in year 180, and he's talking about how the loud applause of Colosseums will long forget his name, which has happened. But there's this thing that, like, you see, like, when you go back and you could take it apart, that it doesn't last forever. It definitely goes into, like, some sad, weird space.
Yeah, it just fades away, you know.
And that's a little disheartening for like back when I was 11. I thought that movies would speak for me for the rest of time.
Well, and you know, I think
And
that's even more relevant today, when like
content is flying through the air.
Right, and so, you know, we had the opportunity to walk the aisles of a video store and trip over stuff that we didn't know about.
Yeah, we had to bust our ass to do discovery.
Yeah.
But in a sense, you got good discovery because the people really wouldn't suggest something that was just like a waste of your time.
Yeah, or you would just like, you know, you'd end up in a certain section because you're looking for this film, and you would see something else that would catch your eye, and sometimes it was good or not or whatever, right? But you had that process, and, you know, that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And, you know, I think even, you know, when Netflix was first on the computer and they had all the recommendations, they were trying to recapture some of that in the online environment. But now if you're watching Netflix on Apple TV or whatever, it's like they're just showing you their newest shit.
Yeah.
And they're flooding your screen
My friend,
with content.
a really heavy filmmaker the other day, said something really funny. He goes, you know, this is the signing of the girl that did Scandal. I forgot her name.
Yeah.
They're like, that's the sign that Netflix is Enron. And it's going down.
Oh, Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah, that's the end of that bitch.
Yeah.
I was like, you think? He goes, yeah.
They're signing everything.
I know they are.
And,
I know they are. But he was like, that's the first move where I see the cards falling. I was like, oh. You know, my friends that have deals with them are smiling. And,
right. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A guy I play softball with has a lot of Netflix deals, and he's just like swimming in dough.
I bet. Well, it's an interesting time, right? Like the movie studios used to have all the money, and, you know, everyone else had to kind of figure it out and play by their rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, now they're struggling to compete.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the tech bubble money.
Sure.
Right? And so Netflix can pay whatever they want.
Yeah.
to as
And I
many
think
people as
then
they
there'll
want.
be Amazon just coming in and just going and
Absolutely.
eating it.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
that guy's got a lot of dough.
Yeah. Last question. Who's your favorite DJ?
Favorite DJ? I'm going to have to say Muggs just because of history.
Love Muggs.
I'm not allowed to say anyone else. I get paid for that.
You're under contract.
No, I just love him as a person, and he's part of my world, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Nah, they're great. And so my Cypress Hill was the first, was my introduction to music journalism.
Really?
When I was trying to become a music journalist.
You had to go interview those guys?
No, I did a show review.
Okay.
And that was kind of my like audition for my first
That's
writing
weird because
job.
our autobiographies meet there because like they've changed my life indirectly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was the character in How I Could Just Kill a Man that gets shot and does
Is that
all this.
right?
Yeah, I remember in New York City I used to get laid by like hot Puerto Rican girls that knew me from a video.
That's big.
I was famous from a video.
That's awesome.
But that was because of them.
Yeah.
You know, and Shady, who's still a
I
friend of mine.
didn't get famous from my article, but you know.
But that was like
It's a
my
start.
life-changing music video evolving,
Yeah.
and these kids that like, you know, Mugg showed me that like he had an earlier life with 783, and he had already been around the block with major record labels, and he got kind of taken.
Yeah.
And he's inspiring in the sense that he went back to his 8-track and made this group in his room, and it became what it was, which was pretty wild to watch.
Yeah.
It's early. He was like an early adopter of taking the power back.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Good stuff, dude. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me, dude.
Absolutely.
Congratulations with this.
So how does everybody find you online?
Oh, I think the best thing to do is just at my name on the Instagram or my name online.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just at Patrick Hoelck, and that has, my Insta has a link to whatever I'm focusing on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yo, that was Patrick Hoelck on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like talking to that dude. He had some great stories. Love to hear what you think. Leave us a review on iTunes. Hit us with some 5 stars if you would. I'd appreciate that. Or leave us a comment. Hit me on Twitter at Rebel Radio Net. Our Facebook page, Rebel Radio Net. Watch a video on YouTube. Do whatever you feel like. Whatever makes you feel good. Buy a book on Audible. Buy some travel on Upside. Support our sponsors. I don't care. What I really want you to do is come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.